Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about priorities right now in regards to the cyber challenges of the cyber domains, national security, both DoD and Homeland Security. Jim, I'm going to throw it over to you and talk to us about priorities for this year.
Okay, Luke, let me give you three priorities for Fortinet: supply chain simplification and automation of response. Supply chain. Fortinet is actually the world's biggest producer of security devices. We ship as many next generation firewalls, for instance, as the next three biggest vendors combined. And while this gives us economies of scale in production and the abilities to see a vast amount of threat data, we recognize that supply chain security and demonstrating this to the federal government is increasingly important. So one of our priorities for this year is customizing the manufacture and handling of products that are dedicated to the federal government and its prime contractors. For example, demonstrating the validation of these key foundational products down to the component level, and creating a secure software vault where the proprietary code is safe from outside access, but where we can give U.S. government customers the ability to inspect the code to ensure integrity. Simplification. We've talked repeatedly in this show about zero trust, but the reality is implementing a zero trust architecture requires that you do half a dozen or more discrete functions. And that can be a lot of stuff to buy and build and then to maintain. So can you simplify it down to two things? It's a connection. So you have two ends of that connection. Can you have something that's at the enterprise end? Can you have something that's at the client end, the endpoint, and that's ideally software downloadable? And the answer is yes. We've actually got solutions that will do that. And then automation of response. I think the top of mind threat that not only IT professionals, but at this point, executives and corporate boards worry about is ransomware. And the reality is if you're responding to ransomware in minutes and it's executing in seconds, it's game over. So what you've got to do is you have to automate the ability at the endpoint to have behavioral analytics that can look at what's happening, that can put something in a virtual environment, a sandbox, look at it and say, bad, stop it, even roll it back. And then can you have automation at the security operations center to allow you to do the kind of orchestration you need to deal with those kind of dynamic and damaging activities.
Absolutely. Going to roll over to lessons learned. Ron, I want to start with you. Top lesson learned as you've gone on this journey trying to implement these various capabilities. A million plus, there's lots of things that you discovered. Top lesson learned.
Big data analytics, building upon what actually Jim just was talking about. The ability to understand your environment, see yourself, and understand what is anomalous behavior, and to be able to do that at speed is incredibly important. And within the Army, our big data platform is really leveraging the best open source software. We call it Gabriel Nimbus inside the Army, but it really allows us to move very quickly. When you look at the incidents over the last year, it's not only about understanding that anomalous behavior, but it also gives us the ability, based upon all the sensor data we have going into our big data platform, to be able to go back and look, when did we see an activity? And we're able to go back to understand, what was patient zero, or where was the indication of compromise. And so that is incredibly important. We've also brought into that big data platform commercial threat intelligence. And we also leverage industry capabilities for looking at ourselves from the external, again, which is incredibly important. And we bring that all together so we're able to, in our operations center, be able to understand and respond much faster. That is incredibly important in this world we're in today.
And no doubt trying to do that at machine speed, which is really important. Find that needle in a stack of needles, if you will. Bob Costello, top lesson learned, perhaps at your short tenure at CISA, but perhaps you can expand that a little bit. You've been in the environment in DHS for some time. What's the lesson learned there? Well, what's the pearls of wisdom you'd like to share with the community?
I don't know if I have many pearls of wisdom. I think that what I would always advise people is, like, you can't go it alone. We need our partner community. We need good connections with the research community. Private sector is absolutely critical to our success here at CISA. Critical for me and lessons learned is that you have to listen a lot more the higher up you go. So I have to be very receptive that maybe the ways that I did things when I was hands-on keyboard or in different roles maybe aren't the right ways now. So it comes back to my relentless focus on people. The other is that I want to work with my teams and inject that operator focused mindset that we had at, when you and I were at ICE or CBP. We want to have a deep relationship with our operators and the entire agency's customer base to ensure we're meeting their mission requirements while ensuring that we have the best cybersecurity posture possible. So those would be just some words of advice I have for people either looking to move up or to be successful in cybersecurity.
Fantastic. Great advice and good insight there. We're going to wrap it up with this last question. Of course, we could talk all day, but we don't have all day. But we do have a few more moments. And I'm going to start with you, Dave, and paint a picture of the future. What's it going to look like in 2 to 3 years? What's the demand signal you're seeing across the private public sector customer base, if you will, in regards to this aspect of cybersecurity?
Yeah, thank you, Luke. Good question. It's interesting because there's a lot of futuristic or modernization talk in parallel that's going on now that we're being asked about. I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. I've been drawn in on the intelligence community and some agencies saying, okay, we want to look to not just mobile edge, and obviously that doesn't normally sit in a lot of people's minds, but when you look from a tactical edge or trying to position out, one of the things is security is quantum key distribution. We just recently did a test from the commercial side overseas and back here, and was very effective. We're being asked more about that. Now, again, I know that's kind of a futuristic or down the road type thing, but I can see that being more and more proliferated, a couple of years out. People, how do we look at that? It's still in its leading edge state of it. It has a lot of maturity to do in that regard. But how do we secure? Because we have a very aggressive adversaries, and I say plural on that because it's not just the name players we think about, China, Russia, but there's others that we can throw in there that are being very aggressive. And I think that's important as we started to see this adoption to some cloud of native security platforms. Again, someone alluded to it earlier, we're not going to have everybody go to the cloud. However, it's important that those security requirements from the going on that platform, and we're going to see more and more of that. One element I see that is SASE, when you start to see about this secure access service edge implemented. What we've seen even today is that with SASE and zero trust architecture, what effective capabilities are being brought to bear today. So I think that'll be more mature, more activated across different organizations and agencies. And I think the one thing, and just maybe kind of taking off Rob's comment about more, words of advice, is I think the partnerships that we have in the community. Listen, the industry has a lot of technology that is forward-leaning. Now, does all of it apply specifically to our market and can do today? That's not the point. The point is, how do we insert those mission requirements of DOD and the IC and the federal government and insert them into our field so we can bring those capabilities and then start to partner with some of these that bring that holistic chain where we're talking application layer, data layer, and provide that to the community. I think doing that brings a lot of value. And I think at the same time, it also goes back to my comment about agility and security and that balance between those two. So I think that'll be more flush in the future over the next 1-2 years.
Absolutely. And I really do appreciate that. Jim, what's it going to look like in 2 to 3 years? What's out of the Petri dish and sort of in the pipeline to be implemented at Fortinet? What's it going to look like over the next couple of years?
So look, when I think of the future, I'm going to give you two things: convergence and AI. Zero trust basically says let's make security not be defined based on location. And I think we as IT and security professionals will succeed when we say take that to the next level and say, look, we have cloud, we have edge computing, we have software-defined networking. We should make the location of the user, the data, and the computing resource irrelevant. It really should be about enabling and securing the connection, full stop. We shouldn't be saying, under these conditions, we do it this way, or you have to trade off security and performance. We succeed when we make these inseparable. And artificial intelligence, we've talked about, Dave just talked about what partners bring to this. The industry's got 10 plus years experience doing cyber artificial intelligence. It's gotten really powerful, sub-second abilities to make determinations. It's portable enough that we can give you the ability to deploy this within agencies, so we don't even have to work with you on this. So this gives us the ability to detect those anomalies that Ron talked about. We can, to put it in Star Wars terms, detect a disturbance in the force and automate your ability to respond, but to do it in a fashion that the human can control. It's a chatbot, not a Terminator Skynet. That's the future.
Future looks bright and very important. Really do appreciate it. Mark, how about at Illumio? What's it going to look like in a couple of years from where you all sit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wanted to, if I could, just briefly talk about, the lesson learned that we had recently over the last year or so, and that's visibility. I think Jim alluded to the fact that zero trust can be seen as a really complicated endeavor that may take a long time. I believe that the most important place to start is you have to be able to see your network in real time to be able to understand the connections and what's talking to what and realize, is this what I want, or is this a security violation? And unfortunately, right now, the majority of the federal networks, we can't see what's talking to what from workload and application perspective. So the lesson learned that we see is to give that visibility. The idea is you can't do something about an enemy that you can't see coming, right? So I like the idea of the eyes on target. And, back to the, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so thanks for the tee up. But, Yoda always would say, there is no try, there's only do or not do. And that really applies to the cyber attackers. They're not trying to attack us, they're going to attack us. And we can't try to defend. We either have to defend or we don't. And I think we have to have a solid way forward. One of the ways that we do that here at Illumio is we're able to take that map, right, that real-time networking map that we can see for the first time, and then we can ingest vulnerability data. So you can now have a score. So each of the open ports or each of the connections will have a vulnerability score. Maybe one is 83 and another one at the bottom of the list is number 7. And now, using military principles, prioritize and execute, right? So now I go to the highest vulnerability and now I start to close the attack vector. That's really the only way forward, instead of just sort of playing 52 card pickup with a bunch of playing cards and figuring out, well, maybe I go to this one over here first for zero trust and this one over here for zero trust. That's maddening, and we're going to continue to get attacked. So it's the visibility piece, it's the prioritize and execute, and then I see really a lot of the work that we're doing around micro-segmentation expanding beyond just the high value assets, right? So for example, on the commercial side, we started working with Morgan Stanley, one of the largest banks in the world, a couple of years ago with 50 workloads. And now they're at 350,000 workloads. So currently they have the largest deployment of zero trust microsegmentation in the world. So I believe that, sometimes the government can be a little bit behind the commercial space, but they can use the commercial space as lessons learned to accelerate their own journey. And I see that in the next 2 to 3 years, there's going to be really a de-emphasis on the word zero trust and more of an emphasis on micro-segmentation, specifically focusing on the host, which is giving you that unlimited scalability. So,
no doubt about it. And yes, now more than ever, portability from the private sector capabilities over to the public sector. Bob, you're on a journey there, 2 to 3 years, and now you look around. What's it going to look like in your mind? What's the department asking you to do? What's your leadership asking you to do? What does it look like? You're post zero trust at that point. Give us a state of the state. What's it going to feel like at that point?
Sure. And I don't know if we ever get post zero trust. It should be part of how we design new systems. And it's going to take a long time. Most of the federal government has a lot of legacy systems.
Sure.
It can be difficult. I think what I see in 2 or 3 years, particularly here at CISA, is an organization that people want to come to work at because it's much more like the private sector. You're getting good IT, we're moving fast, we're having an extremely diverse workforce, and we're really on the cutting edge. I think in 2 or 3 years, it's always hard to guess where cybersecurity will be. None of us maybe fully anticipated SolarWinds, except in some circles. But we know we all need to be working towards collectively private and public sector on things like SBOM and other areas. And so I think in 2 or 3 years, at least for my organization, I think you're going to see a very, very mature CIO's office where people are working together and supporting our operators and just leading the way internally. My role is to support the internal operations of CISA. And I really foresee that the rest of, I hope that the rest of DHS is going to be coming to my teams for them to go work for them and for my team to take on leadership roles across the department and the federal government, because we're going to really, lead the way in delivery and, just pushing forward. I really want in 2 or 3 years to be a hallmark for doing IT acquisition, for doing cybersecurity, and for having a positive and growing workforce.
No doubt that you're absolutely laser focused on the gold standard, and everyone's looking forward to that. Really do appreciate it. And again, congratulations on the new appointment, Ron. How about at U.S. Army Cyber Command? You talked about sort of some of the stuff you're thinking about doing in the future with rolling to all services, et cetera. If I'm coming out of the military academy and I show up, well, what's it going to look like? You're going to hand me a laptop and a rifle and say, go off and do good things? Or, what can we expect from a soldier's perspective, an officer's perspective, a weapon systems perspective?
So I kind of three parts of that. As the other gentlemen have really discussed, it's really about embracing and moving forward on the zero trust environment, that framework, that journey. And that really is moving from the perimeter defense in depth to be, never trust, always verify. And particularly Jim described it very, very well. So that's absolutely critical, I think, fully embracing that. The other is to accelerate the adoption of cloud native applications. And that's not only in the enterprise, but there's a big move of that of what it means to our tactical forces to have the time and place access to the information needed. And then what I really want to emphasize, which you really haven't talked about yet today, the incredible importance of data. Data is absolutely the new currency that is absolutely critical. Historically, data has been tightly coupled to an application or a weapon system, and it is about how do we really embrace data being in a data fabric and widely available to reuse and reuse. Industry has done that really, really well in so many things, and I think the government has been slower to catch on this. But data is the currency moving forward, and we're working that really hard in the Army, and I believe that is a key part of the way ahead. And you will see substantial progress, I think, in that area in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, we really appreciate it. I want to thank all the guests here for taking the time out of your busy schedules and for everything that you do to keep this country safe. I'd like to thank all the folks on the program here, and I'd like to thank the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.